Thanks everyone for coming. Sorry to delay you, although that was more a matter of traffic than anything under our control. So thanks for coming to the AUIS translation event. I'll just talk you through briefly what we're going to do this evening, and then I'll pass it over to our distinguished set of guest presenters. So basically, this is the logic behind this event is that in the pre-COVID era, we came up with the idea of a translation major and minor at AUIS, and then the virus struck. And our plans for developing a big program kind of got frozen in time. So this is our hopefully sort of pseudo post-COVID attempt to get translation back up and running as a project at the AUIS campus. So one thing to mention, we promised you poetry readings by Choman Hardy. Unfortunately, Choman today has food poisoning and she can't come in. So unfortunately, we're going to have her poetry read by someone else. I also have food poisoning, so I'm going to sort of sit down in 2 minutes and let some healthy people talk to you for an hour or so. But this is what we're going to be doing today. So we've got one of Choman's poems translated by herself, which I think one of our students will be reading. We've also got, if I have it, we have the wrong book here, but so Kashkul, the Campus Translation Institute, just published a new recent version of Nali's poetry in English, side by side, so Kurdish and English together. So we're also going to have a reading of the English version of a Nali poem with the Kurdish version projected and the Kurdish version with the English version projected. Then we'll get on to presentations by our set of professors, professionals, and employers. Then we'll give you some information about the major and minor in translation here for any of you who are interested in studying it at AUIS. Then we'll have an open Q&A with the presenters, so anything you want to ask them about the practice of translation, about careers in translation, anything like that, you can ask them whatever you want to. And then after that, we'll take a quick 5-minute break to sort out our final ranking for the Student Translation Awards. And then the final part of today's gathering will be the awarding of prizes in the first ever AUIS Translation Awards. So those of you who submitted something for the awards, hopefully you will be taking a prize away with you at the end of tonight. Okay? Anyway, let me quickly scroll down. What we're going to do next is we will introduce our first reading of the night. And this is a poem that Choman wrote herself originally in Kurdish, but then translated herself into English. And this is something, of course, that if everybody could do this, there would be no need for translators. But not everybody can do this, and so there is a need. So who's reading that one? Anyway. Oh, yeah, okay, so up you come.
Good evening. By the murky pond, in which the two sisters drift, look at your policemen, look at the robes in their hands, and tell me if these men hunt fish or mermaids. Are they saviors or offenders? Look at the crowd, coming to watch. Look at the keen eyes and cameras. Look how much they yearn for blood. Blood and images of blood, abuse and images of abuse, self-immolation and its images, rape and its images. Might this be the dictator's fault? Caused by his blood-filled cells, his gassing our souls, his slaughter of freedom. Might this be heritage of violence, which has turned us into a people who know no mercy, feel no guilt, and are never shocked? Might it be the revolution's fault, caused by glorifying murder, the rituals of aggressions? Might it caused by the brilliant lies and endless promises, by liberation's rape and the fall from grace of its revolutionaries? I don't know, homeland. The excuses are numerous, and women are numerous. Force and violence are brothers, and women are alone. Homeland, you are still drenched in blood in my dream. Tell me how I can fix you. Which crime shall I tackle? Which wound shall I bandage? You tell me, where shall I start? What shall I do to make you change? I can't turn my back on you, to carry on as you are. With what will you change? The pleading mothers, angry streets, and endless analysis did not change you. What shall I do with you, homeland? What shall I do with all this blood? Where shall I put you to prevent you from filling my days with damage and grief? Where shall I put you? Brutalized homeland, You tell me, where shall I put you? Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot for that. So yeah, so this is somebody turning something that was originally written in Kurdish into English. And our next set of readings are something opposite. So this is now going to be two poems by the Kurdish poet Nali, which Kashkul, which Andrew will be talking about later, has recently published in what we call a parallel text, right? So a book with on one page the Kurdish and on the facing page the English. So who's going to be reading these ones? So China. So yeah, so what I thought would be cool for this one, so China, if you can read the English while we project the Kurdish, and then read the Kurdish while we project the English, and then hopefully you in the audience can see what kind of mental work has to go into translating this, right? So yeah, so English first.
Okay. Interlace. Interlace. The raven ringlet wafting black against your shining face is smoke from incense curling dark across the fireplace. 100 fractures rock my hand, 100 vows you break. The only remedy will be to bind this hand in your embrace. Your freckle, fruit forbidden in the Eden of your face. Your eyes, two idols tempting from your brow were faithful prey. Last night, your hair caressed my head, your ringlet like a wraith, and still my head is reeling from your moonflower bouquet. Your lips have never offered me a promise in good faith. All told, you are a flower, though unscented, lacking grace. My love, let's wear this new ghazal of verses interlaced. Your stature bears aloft the majesty of Nali's phrase. Sorry.
And then, yeah, so then the Kurdish version while we project the English version.
Yep. زلفت كالسروبة خمو تابش أمرو دودي سيهي عود لسر عاريزي بشكو دستم كبسد وعد لسد جيغش كاوة جبري نية أم كسر هتاني خيا أستو خالد شيا داني جنمي جنتي روتا شاوت شيا فتني حرمي قبلي أبرو شوبوي سرسن بولي زلفد لسري دام استاش سركم مستل لبرنش أي شوبو نمبیستووە هەرگیز لە دەمت بێنێ وەفایێ هەرچەندە سەراپای گوڵی ئەمما گوڵی هێرۆ قوربان وەرە تا ئەم غەزەلە تازە لەبەرکەین عیز و شەرەفی نالی بە تەشریفی قەدی تۆ.
Okay, so one person will be winning this book as one of the prizes later on. Anyways, if I don't break it first. Next up then, we want to get on to our presentations from our visiting people. So am I right, Kazi, you're going to be introducing them, is that right? So before Kazi introduces them, I should introduce Kazi. So Kazi is a professional medical translator and someone who has been working with us teaching translation at AUIS for the last year or so. So welcome Kazi Saleh, and Kazi, you can introduce everybody else.
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So good evening, everyone. I am Kazi. I have MA and PhD in translation studies, and more specifically in medical translation. So specialized translation, medical translation, and I also work as a translator, freelance translator for NHS Scotland, and I also translate for like 2 agencies in Italy. And I teach here translation for undergraduate students and also master students here in public universities. And here at AUIS, I teach translation. And some of my lovely students are also here, who are very good students actually in translation. So it's a pleasure to be here and to talk about translation. I think that I can never stop talking about translation because it's a very interesting activity. And also as a profession, I personally enjoy it quite a lot when I translate. And my students know that when we have a translation class, sometimes I forget about the time. So they remind me that time is up. What I want to say is that translation is very interesting. It is One of the disciplines that takes you like almost everywhere that you want. So if you are interested in medicine, translation is the path to take you. If you're interested in literature, then translation can take you there. In, I don't know, cars, you can talk about cars through translation. You can explore the world of cars, how they are manufactured, how they are sold, how they are repaired. Because basically when you are a translator, you will be asked to translate different types of texts, so they are from different disciplines. And if I want to talk about translation as studies, then you can go almost through every discipline through translation, because I remember that I've been always interested in medicine, because I come from a medical family, but I didn't have the chance to study medicine. So through translation, I went to the field of medicine. And now I work with doctors, pharmacists, and blah, blah, blah. So you see, that was kind of road that took me to translation, to medicine. And now I'm thinking about taking a completely different discipline, which is IT. So now I want to go to the IT field through translation. So you see, it can take you everywhere. It's different from other branches of studies. So I can see that this is a key. And if you choose to study translation, then I am sure that you will not regret it, because it's very, very interesting. I took from experience. And so I'm not going to talk more about this. I'll try to introduce our experts here today. And so we have got Alan. Alan proudly was one of my students, and now he is my MA student. I'm supervising his MA dissertation. I think you were working on business translation? Yeah? Contract, how business contracts are translated into English, and then they're translated from English into Kurdish, which is very specialized kind of translation. I think he's brave enough to try that. And apart from that, he works as a translator. He's got an agency in the bazaar. So today he is here to talk about his experience, how translation can be taken as a profession, and whether it's a good business or not. And then we've got Dr. Saber from the University of Human Development. We were together when we were IM undergraduate students. And now we've got both PhD in translation. And Dr. Saber, I think we never regretted, right? No. We will do that again. So tonight he's here to talk about his experience. And while he was in the UK, he also worked as a translator for the police, for the court, for hospitals. So he would be talking about his experience and also his experience as a teacher of translation. And also we've got Mr. Harim from the translation department, University of Soleimani. He'll be talking about, nowadays we've got machine translation and translation memory tools, but still they cannot replace human brain. So that's a good news, because I always thought that, well, if the machine is going to do the translation, so what would I do? But then no, the good news is that still this thing inside here is very useful when it comes to translation. And of course, you know Mr. Andrew from Kashkul. So they are going to talk about different things when it comes to translation. So I'll leave the stage for Mr. Alan to start. And of course, later, if you have any question about anything, we're all here to answer you as much as we can. So thank you very much, Mr. Alan.
Good evening, everyone. So today, my name is Alan, as the doctor mentioned. I have been working in the field of translation for about 10 years, more than 10 years. I am in the job market right now, and I just came back from the bazaar translating a few things. One thing that that is available now in the job market is what we call ready-made templates. We do have translations that are, let's say, ready-made templates like, let's say, your IDs, your information card, your national cards. These are ready-made templates that are translated. You just change the names and change the things, the numbers. And then we have some other kinds of translation, what we call them, they're not ready-made templates. You just have to, like a contract. It's not ready-made, okay? You have to translate them. You have to sit on the computer and sit for 2 hours to translate a single page. So these are costs the clients different, let's say, sums of money. The ready-made templates in the market, they cost the clients about $10 actually, and the other ones usually depends on the translator and the quality of the translation. Usually translators charge the clients for about $20. So I can say that the job market is good for translators. And what I say is only for English. We do have other, let's say, languages like German, like Spanish, like Turkish. These are, if you are, let's say, interested in learning those languages, you will have, let's say, you can save a lot of money with those, especially Turkish and Spanish, because we lack those, let's say, people, those translators. Anyway, so, but your major is English, so you have to talk about English, I guess, not other languages. So that's the job market, using what's now available for translators. And it's, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel because it's good. And yeah, that's pretty much the job market. Well, yeah, the deadlines for, let's say, for translators, I mean, sometimes people call you at night and they say they have an appointment for tomorrow. They need their translations tonight. So it's really, let's say, boring, and you don't work at home. I mean, you have an agency, you work, you're at your agency, and then you shut everything at 5 o'clock in the evening, you go home, you want to rest, okay? But then someone calls you, they need something for tomorrow because they have an appointment at the embassy or at the consulate. They want to get a visa, so they need their translations. They forget about everything until the last minute. So usually you can charge your clients more because let's say they call you at night, okay, and they need their translations immediately. However, there are translators, let's say, their translations are full of mistakes, whether with the ready-made templates or with the other things like they're not templates. Those are charging less for people, and the quality of translations are low. Yeah, pretty much what I wanted to talk about. If you have any questions later on, I will be more than glad to answer your questions concerning the job market. Thank you very much for listening.
Good evening. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever translated anything? A line, a passage, a paragraph? Yes? Great. So you already know about translation. By the way, translation can be a product or a process. Translation is fun, interesting, and more importantly, challenging. I love the challenging part of translation. By the way, we have translation and interpretation. For some people, they are almost the same. They are totally different. I've been working in translation as an interpreter at the beginning, translator, translation teacher, so in different areas of translation, and I enjoyed all the steps throughout the journey. There are a lot of positive things about translation. When you translate, you work between two languages, two different cultures. You can translate into foreign languages, in which case you introduce your own culture, your own, the material that you have in your culture. You can translate from foreign languages into your own culture. You will enrich your culture. So in both cases, you are helping different cultures coming together, different peoples, nations coming together, and you are there bringing them together. You are bridging the gap, which is very interesting. There's one thing a lot of people are concerned about, which is the time that you need during translation processes. So the translation process is the process that you go through to convert the message from one language into another. It takes time, a lot of time. However, modern technology can help you a lot. And as Dr. Kazi said, the good news is that machine and technology cannot replace our brain, at least for a foreseeable future. This is the good news. But at the same time, technology will help us. It will accelerate the process for you. So imagine you travel to Baghdad and it takes 5 hours, but technology will help you to reduce the amount of time by, 60%. So technology is there to help you to reduce the amount of time that you need to translate, but still you need time to do the translation. You need to be patient, persistent, enjoy the process. I do enjoy the process. I am a translation lecturer, but I do translation as well. As Dr. Kazi said, we used to live in the UK, and while we were in the UK, we worked in different settings as interpreters and translators. I helped immigrants, patients at school, at hospitals. So I helped a lot of people in different settings as an interpreter as well as a translator, which is something good because you help other human beings. And in the case of UK, we helped other Kurdish people who couldn't speak English in the UK, and they needed somebody to help them, for example, in the court or at hospital. And I still have contact with one company, and they send me documents from time to time. During the time of pandemic, I'm sure we translated dozens of documents, so we helped thousands of people. And maybe the most important part of it, it's a profession. Still, I translate documents, and what's very interesting, at the end of the month, I will check my bank account to see how much money is there for me. It's very interesting. You get money. It's a profession. You help your culture, people, and you get money. Yes, there's a job market for translators. I know a lot of translators are unhappy about the amount of money they get for the job they do. But you can be creative. Sometimes there are not many jobs, but you can be creative. You can find ways to have a good market. One of my students graduated like 3 years ago. He didn't have a job. He found a book which was really interesting to him. He translated it into Kurdish, and he had a contract with a publisher to get it published. He got a small amount of money at the beginning, but then he translated a second book, a third book, fourth one. So now he's a professional translator. So you need to take initiation. You need to find different ways. For example, you can translate documents into Kurdish include the English and the Kurdish just to be different. You know, some people would use it for the literature in it, some people use it for the comparison of the two languages, so you can sell more copies. There are many different ways to do so. And the final point I want to talk about, people are proud of their works. They write books, and they are proud of their books. Translation is similarly prestigious. You can translate masterpieces of the world. You can be proud of your translation, okay, because it's a piece of work in a different language. And we have different fields of translations. One of them is literary translation. You can show creativity, which is very interesting. Of course, we have other different areas such as legal translation, business translation, scientific translation. I'm particularly interested in journalistic translation. So as Dr. Kazi referred to this point, maybe you are interested in business. And today we are living in a world which is we focus on interdisciplinary areas. They are more important for today. So you can link to a discipline that you already have knowledge about, interested in it, whatever it may be. In my case, my PhD is about media and translation. I'm interested in media and translation. I combine them. Dr. Kazi is interested in medicine and translation. Maybe you are interested in business or law. You go for legal translation. Business, we have business translation. So there are a lot of opportunities. I enjoyed the journey in the past 15 years, in the journey of working in translation as a translator, interpreter, translation lecturer in different universities and in different settings. Thank you. If you have got any questions, we are here to answer. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Harim from University of Slimani. I teach translation and I also work as a translator. I do agree with my professors that translation is an interesting activity, lots of job opportunities. You can link it to different disciplines. Whatever you are interested in, you can link translation to that field and work in that field. But there is a question. In today's life, we have the rapid advancements in technology. We have machine translation. We have applications, websites, Google Translate, many technological advancements in different fields, especially in translation. So what happens to us as translators in the coming years, 10, 15, 20 years? Are we still going to be in the job market? Are we still going to be in work, or we are going to be replaced by a machine, as many jobs have been replaced by a machine? We can see in different fields that many workers, many employees are being replaced. But what happens to translation? That's a valid question we have to ask ourselves, because we do not want to choose a field that's there for a short period of time. We want to have a job that's long-lasting. To answer that question, I want to start by telling you a story. There was an experiment in Georgetown University in 1954 in collaboration with IBM company. There was an experiment to create a machine that translated Russian sentences into English. And the experiment was successful. They created a machine which successfully translated 40 English sentences, Russian sentences into English. And it was a great success back then. And the team that worked on that machine claimed that in 2 years' time, they can create a machine that fully translates whatever been input into that machine from Russian into English. So now, after almost 70 years, still we do not have a machine that can fully operate, that can interact, that can work, and that can replace a translator. If we talk about the technicalities, it's not that easy because when that claim was made in the 1950s, translation was considered just as a linguistic matter, but as we can observe nowadays, that translation is not only related to language, it's related to cultures, it's related to communication in sociocultural situations. The same sentence can have different meanings in different contexts, in different settings, which is not easy for a machine to distinguish. So, I'm not going to talk about the technicalities, but I'm going to tell you about some indicators. We have, in translation, we have major language pairs and rare language pairs. For example, we have English-Chinese language pair, English-Arabic, English-Russian language pair. Those language pairs, we have lots of texts translated every day. We have lots of machines and translation memory tools that work on those languages. And after all those years, we do not have a machine that can fully translate those texts. Yes, we have machines that can translate, but that's not a replacement of a human translator because, as I mentioned, different sentences, different texts can have different meanings in different contexts. So you can consider that as an indicator, and that's my final point I have to make tonight. Whenever we see that English-Arabic language pair is being canceled for human translators and it's fully automated, whenever we see English-Chinese translation language pair is being canceled and it's all done by a machine, then we can say English-Kurdish translation is at risk. So I do not want to say that Kurdish is a less important language, but it's a fact that we do not have as much text as in English Chinese or English Russian language pair. So I do not see that there will be a machine that can translate from English into Kurdish or Kurdish to English in the coming at least 20 years. And even if we have that machine, it will not be a replacement of a human being. So if you're interested in the technicalities, in what happens during the process or other questions related to machine translation, I'll be glad to answer all your questions. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Slater. I'm the director of the Kashkool Center. I thought I would just kind of explain what we're doing at the Kashkool Center and what kind of opportunities are available for the students, especially minor, major in translation. Our focus, we have a number of things that we do at Kashkool. We work on oral history projects. We work with rare document archiving, but our translation project is really something very important to us. We focus on literary translation with the goal of publishing it in high quality journals and publishing houses. So there's a very particular way that we approach this work. We see it as very high level translation, so it requires a team between native speakers in the target and the source language. So for this work, let me give an example. So in our recent Nali translation, Dr. Marie Labrosse and native speakers here, like Jar Homer, who's on our Kashkool team, worked together to produce a high-quality English language translation of Nali's poems. So in the work that we do, we're always looking to keep native speakers on both sides of the spectrum involved in the translation process, because we really feel when you get to that literary language, that level of skill is required. You know, it's really a higher level that we're looking for. And if you're interested in being a translator, particularly a literary translator, focus on being a great writer first, because if you're not a great writer, you're not ready for this kind of material. So if you want to translate into Kurdish, focus on being the best Kurdish writer you possibly can be, because translation is a literary art, and the ability of people to appreciate Nali or appreciate a foreign writer into Kurdish really depends on the high level ability of that literary translator. So we're excited to do more projects like this, do more publications. I'm hoping in the next year we move more into novels. We've done a lot of poetry. I was really encouraged at the Suleimani Book Fair to see the incredible amount of contemporary writing output. There's so many Kurdish and Iraqi Arab writers writing so much stuff, and almost none of it is being translated and getting into the outside world. So at Kashkol, we want to be part of that, starting to increase the conversation between Kurdish literature and other literatures. So we're excited if you guys want to come and work with us on that. We're very entrepreneurial, so if you have a project of a great writer that needs to be translated, bring it to us. We'll see if it can be done. And we're always looking for more interns to kind of help with our work over there. Some of the other things that you might be interested in, we're interested in students kind of self-organizing, writing workshops, writing events, anything like that that you guys are interested in. We're interested in supporting it at Kashkol, and cultural events that you guys want to do. I don't get a lot of visitors out there in the Kashkol Center, so I'm happy if you guys come out and see me. But literary events that you guys want to do on campus, let me know, and we can organize that. And if you want to be involved in our translation work, let us know, but I'll let you know it's demanding, and we insist on high-level writing ability. Because we take a lot of pride in the work that we're publishing. We're looking to publish it in very reputable places, but we're very excited to work with any of you. So if you have any questions about Kashkol, our work, our internships, please ask me any questions and I'll talk to you afterwards. Thank you.
So I think the next thing on our hit list, so Kazi, were you going to talk again about anything separate or? No. Okay, so I think the next thing we wanted to mention was quickly to go over, and yes, this is my responsibility, the programs that AUIS has in translation, right? So our minor and our major. So let me quickly sort of talk you through. I don't know how well you can read up on that. I mean, people at the back, Mariam, for example, can you read this? Nope. Okay. So it seems the cutoff is exactly where Mariam is. So if Mariam moves 2 seats closer, all the problems will go. Okay, but yes, the basic idea, so I'll start with the minor. So all minor programs at AUIS are 5 classes, right? So to get the minor in translation here, so if you're like a business major or an English major or a medical lab science major, whatever it might be, if you want to add the minor in translation on top of that, you need to pass 5 classes. So of those, 2 of the classes are required. You have to do these 2 classes. And that is TRN 310, Beginning Consecutive Translation Technique, and TRN 311, Advanced Consecutive Translation Technique. So these are the basic skills of translation, working with sort of basic thoughts about how to take, reasonably simple texts of a certain length, and not just to translate them word by word, but to actually turn them into coherent things in another language. So once you've taken those 2 required classes, you have a lot more freedom. You have to take 1 class for the minor on linguistics of some kind. So this might be something like translation theory or the history and origins and structures of English, or it can be any advanced linguistics class. So Jamalia over there, if any of you are interested in linguistics, you can ask her what kind of linguistics classes we have. She is the main person for teaching those. Then you also have to take 1 class on what we're calling advanced language use and writing. So basically, as Andrew just said, right, to be a good translator, you have to be a good writer in your own language. And so when we say advanced language use and writing, we mean really any class which is heavily essay argument based in terms of the assessments. So something where you're writing a few thousand words in a semester for your assessments, arguing, using language very clearly. So this can be any upper level literature, creative writing, or journalism class. And then your final class in the minor has to be an advanced translation class. So this might be translation theory, it might be interpreting. So remember the difference between translation and interpreting is translation is written, interpreting is spoken, which is a bit harder to do for a number of reasons. I mean, Sabia, you said that you worked as an interpreter, so you could maybe talk more about that later. Or you can do a 400 level specialized translation class, like medical translation or legal translation or literary translation. So if you do just these 5 classes, that will get you a minor in translation. So the idea then is you should be qualified on top of your normal major to go and do some translation work out in the rest of the world. So again, if you have any questions about this, let me know afterwards. And then here, more complicatedly, is the major. So the major is 54 credits, so 18 classes. And in this one, you have many more required classes. So to major in, and again, if any of you want to see that, we have paper copies at the back as well of the requirements for the major and the minor. So if you want to pick one of those up, hopefully some of you will have those in front of you as well. But yeah, so to get the major, you have to take a class on the sort of the nature of the English language, a class on basic ideas and current debates in linguistics, a class on translation theory, then those 2 basic translation technique classes. Then you have to take the class on interpreting, spoken translation. You have to do a practical translation project, so this might be like an internship or some kind of, translating half a book or something and trying to get it published. And you have to do a final thesis where you pick a big project, and this is like your last class, is a sort of an extended piece of translation work. And on top of those, you also have to take a set of classes from an array of possibilities. So you have to take 2 out of 3 high-level literature classes because we want you to get sort of maximum language knowledge. So you can study all of British literature, all of American literature, or Shakespeare. So these kind of big, surveys of all the different ways that, that language has been used literarily in these different cultures. You have to take 2 specialized classes. So that can be literary translation, medical translation, legal translation, or simultaneous interpretation, which I always think of as the hardest kind of translation. That's where somebody is speaking, and as they're speaking in one ear, you're producing the other language out of your mouth at the exact same time. You've probably seen people do that when they come here. If we were more important, there would be some people up there in that glass section there doing this as I speak and turning my very sick English into much more fluent and competent Arabic or Kurdish. Then you have to take 3 classes, any class from literature, English, or journalism, again, just to practice that extended kind of argumentative writing to get fluent and to get competent in your foreign language. And then you have to take any 3 classes in linguistics or further translation. So if you want, for example, you can, the other 2 of these specialized translation classes you didn't take here, you can take down here. You can also use this space for things like other languages. So if you go and study abroad, for example, you can we have a study abroad program in Italy, so you can go to Italy, study Italian, and you can count Italian towards your major in this section. So those are the requirements for the major and minor. If you have any questions about those, let me know. But now I think we are ready, if yes, to open things up to a Q&A for the presenters here. So if I pass this along to Kazi. So yeah, and any of you who have any questions, just call them out. If it's a question for a specific person, let us know. I think, Ronnie, you're running around with a microphone. Okay, so Ronnie will come over to you. And so if you put your hand up, Ronnie will come over. Once you've got the microphone, then you can ask your question. Okay, so one person already. Anyway, so...
I'm Mujtaba Juya. I'm originally from Afghanistan. We just arrived here last month. And I have 2 questions, but before asking my questions, I would like to acknowledge your work of translation. The other day we went to this book fair, and there were so many famous books translated into Kurdish. And I was really surprised there. So my questions are regarding life as a translator. The first question is, what do you think about, and I'm not addressing it to any specific person, so anyone can answer this. So as a translator, what do you think about translation as a part-time activity beside your main job? That's my first question. And my second question is there any specific perk to being a translator? Is there any advantages, that has gone unnoticed? If you can talk about it, if there is any specific benefit, beside the, literary benefit or learning languages or whatever. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, if somebody would like to go.
Okay, so the first part, there are a lot of books translated into Kurdish, right? And yeah, one of the questions, is there any benefits of doing translation? In some parts of the world, there are prizes for best translations. I think today we will have a prize for the best translation. So, yes, and as I said before, you can be proud of your translation work as an author is proud of his work. So it is something prestigious to me. Working as a part-time translator is a blessing. I'm a lecturer, and I have some free time for translation, so I get payment for it, and I enjoy doing the translation. If it is challenging, it is more interesting. I enjoy having my computer with me, a cup of coffee, and translating the document, and meet the deadline. And more importantly, at the end of the month, I'll check my bank account. There is some payment for me. So yes, it's very interesting. And there's one thing I'm going to talk about it. I know somebody from the office of the Prime Minister who works as a translator. And from time to time, he will contact me, ask me how to translate this phrase. And I enjoy being able to translate it. And I say, oh, you translate it like this. And this happened over dozens of times. And it's something I enjoyed. So we collaborate, we cooperate, we are in contact with different translators. So I think it is very interesting, rewarding, praiseworthy. Thank you. If you've got any other ideas.
What do you think?
Well,
Do you enjoy life as a translator? So that's a question.
yeah, of course. You know, there are certain things that come to you, and I mean, a couple of days ago, I have been working on chat messages, translating chat messages. Usually, people who, let's say, want to take their spouse to, let's say, UK, United Kingdom. They came back here and they get married. They need to translate their chat messages that they made in Messenger or on social media. And there are certain things that you translate and you love for hours, let's say. Like, how do you translate Basaqobum? How do you translate Juanakam? I mean, it's partly fun, and also, like the doctor mentioned, you can save money, of course, with translation, and you can do that at night. And you can return that chat messages to the agency, and then they pay you half of the money. So it is also promising and rewarding, actually, and it's also fun. Let's say, knowing the private life of people that really, I mean, I have been laughing with my coworker, let's say, a lot these days, because you read all those details, you know, and yeah, of course, part of that as an agency, you have to be confidential, not to disclose, let's say, people's, let's say, private documents, because every single thing comes to you, like the bank accounts, let's say, the marriage certificates. Sometimes marriage certificates come to me and the dowry says 100, 500, 1,000 Rashadi golden liras. Okay, I mean, you laugh at some certain things that you see in the documents. Yeah, of course, it's rewarding, it's fun, and you can do that apart from your main job. You can do that at night, as I said, if you have the ability to, let's say, work at night, of course. Yeah, thank you.
So thank you. Any more questions?
I have one little mini follow-up on that, actually, in terms of perks. So when I worked in Bulgaria before I did my PhD, I worked a lot with interpreters and translators there, and they got to travel a lot after Bulgaria joined the EU. And both Kazi and Sabia studied in Britain, So do you, I mean, is it standard for translators to get to travel a lot? Is that one of the perks that you might sort of assume that a translator would get to do, or is that not so common here? Is there no equivalent of Bulgarians going to Brussels in this part of the world?
No, it wasn't. It just like, yeah, for me, I don't know how many times I traveled in my life. I traveled to the UK, to Jordan, to Turkey, Finland, where else? Iran. Yeah, so no, that's not one of the conditions actually. But then, I would say, I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't talk about, I mean, answer the question myself. I enjoy translation. So I think that whatever challenges come with the translation, I still enjoy it. And once I told my students that once I was looking for a word and I couldn't find it, and then I went to bed. Like in the middle of the night, I had a dream, and in my dream, I found the meaning of the word. And I was like, and I woke up and said, oh my goodness, I found the word. So then I turned on my computer and they started translating. So even in your dreams, you're still enjoying the experience. So I think this is like a passion for something. I don't know. That's what I call it. So I hope that answered the question. Okay.
Yes, with me. Okay. First of all, thank you so much for organizing such a beautiful event. Mainly, my question is to Dr. Ali, and maybe also other people can answer. I've seen that you have interpretation classes and also translation classes. And nowadays, trans-adaptation is a pretty, in fashion kind of field as well. Do you have any plan to introduce trans-adaptation also, because you talk about Shakespeare and you know that Shakespeare has been adopted into different languages, and especially in Kurdish and other languages. So, and other plays also has been adopted. So do you have any plan to introduce trans-adaptation? And to the panel, like, is there any field in Sully University, for example, or where you work with trans-adaptation, and how is the career-wise, like this field in Kurdistan?
Yeah, so on the first part of that, so we don't, so far the translation program is new enough that we haven't ever offered the 400 level classes yet, with the exception of literary translation, which existed even before the translation program did. But the curriculum is flexible, right? We can always add new classes. We can always come up with new 400 level classes. So I think Ahmed, who's not here, is our furthest along translation major at the moment. And he's someone who in the next 2 semesters, let's say, should be getting onto his high level classes. So yeah, like, we don't have that on the books at the moment, but it's the kind of thing that if there was student demand, we could add, for example. So I can imagine as well, thinking about what Harim was talking about earlier, I can imagine offering a class in like computer translation and digital translation, these kind of specialized classes. They're very easy to add on the curriculum if students are interested. So yeah, so not yet, but potentially.
What I teach, we don't really have trans-adaptation, but you're right. Nowadays, it's very common, and it's highly on demand, actually. But no, we don't. Do you, Dr. Saber? Do you teach trans-adaptation? No. No. But I know people doing it. Like, they're not studying it, but then just doing it, I don't know, for TVs, for online platforms.
We don't have something that means it's you can always start it.
Yeah, of course you can, yeah. Yeah, it's something good, but then it's not on offer, like in the academic institutions so far. But something to be considered, actually. Yeah, more questions? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to start off by saying that I absolutely love translation. It's one of the only things I actually enjoy. I agree that it's a very rewarding experience. But I just had to ask a question based on what you have demonstrated as the perks of being a translator. I understand it can be nice as a passion, it can be nice as a hobby maybe, but
for a serious career potential, I don't necessarily believe you can promise anything when it comes, especially in this region of the world, because even the way you mentioned it sounds from a very elitist perspective, and it's something that you have to be the best at to achieve. Dr. Kazi talked about how it can be a transcending experience and it can take you places. Well, in order to do that, you have to be one of the very best. One of you also talked about translators working for the Prime Minister. Again, you need to reach the very top. So for a common person who wants to pursue translation, I don't think it's a great career opportunity, and it's not, especially here. I would love it to be, but I don't think it is. So if you have anything that would be like, if you can explain some of the perks, a way that it can sway someone to pursue this as a career, that would be lovely. And another problem with that is, I think that Mr. Harim mentioned that he said, it will not go obsolete because machines will never be able to do the same job. I agree it will not go obsolete, but you cannot deny that there will be a decrease in demand for translators, and that is something that you cannot prevent. It is going to happen whether you like it or not. And once that happens, that decrease happens, that competition to be the elite also increases with it. So it keeps decreasing the possibility of someone finding a lot of success and actual success in translation. So what is your response to that, and how would you battle that exactly? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, Dr. Saber, I think you talked about the guy working for the Prime Minister, so...
Okay, yeah. Generally speaking, okay, there is one problem in Kurdistan, and the problem is that in the past 20 years, people who worked in translation had experience, but not qualification, academic degrees. So there is a very good opportunity in front of you to combine qualification, knowledge, and passion, and have experience. You start at the beginning working on your own project, translating a couple of books, getting them published. Then step by step, you become professional. And if you have a qualification plus some experience, then you can be better translators than those who did in the past. Going back to the point of my friend who's working in the Office of the Prime Minister, I don't know if you know about this, but there's an Office of Translation in the Office of the Prime Minister. They translate all important news around the world from different languages into Kurdish, and they present it to the Prime Minister in his office at 8 o'clock in the morning. So my friend works between English and Kurdish. He has experience. He has master's degree in translation in the UK, so he has combined both of them. Then he got the job there. I know there are not many jobs, but we can create jobs. This is one thing, we can do it. I'm sure because I know people who started translating and they became translators and they got contracts with publishers. So you start. Children's literature is a very important area we can develop. So there are a lot of points to talk about. In the Arab era, I assume some people speak Arabic, are native speakers of Arabic. In the Arab world, translation is there for the past 50 years, maybe century. It is new in Kurdistan, which means it's a fertile land to develop. There are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of books written in Kurdish. We need to translate them into other languages. We can create a job market for it. So I don't know if there's any other point related to this. Yeah. Okay. I hope I answered the question and I didn't make it complicated.
Thank you, Doctor. By the way, I think it was on, today's Tuesday, right? Yeah, it was on Wednesday, that's last week. A doctor called me from, you know, Hiwa Hospital. It's for cancer patients. So now there is a national project. It's a big one, huge. They want to translate patient guidelines from English into Kurdish for people who have cancer, different types of cancer. So they contacted me to be, you know, the one who would be like leading the project, and they want me to see if my students are interested in participation, because this is not just about, you know, translation. It's also about helping people who are really in need of information about cancer, people who've got cancer but they don't know anything about the disease and how to deal with it, how that would change their lifestyle, how that affects their, I don't know, families, etc., etc. So this is something huge, and I said I would be more than happy to help. And so now I am thinking about talking to my students here and elsewhere, different universities, and not just my students. I also want students from other, you know, departments to come forward and be part of this project, because this is going to be something, as I said, national, not just very local, like to a university or department. So you see, this is a very good starting point for those people who want to find, you know, jobs through translation, because it's through things like that in this region that you can find job opportunities if you want to work as a translator. Yeah, so, yeah.
When you work as a translator, you are not alone. It is not an individualistic work. You, thanks to modern technology, you are in contact with other people. I have a friend who is a literary translator, and from time to time he will send me a sentence, sometimes with the translation, asking for my opinion. And my Arabic is not good. Currently, I'm revising a translation which has a lot of Arabic texts, and there are certain sentences that I'm not sure about. I've highlighted them, and I will get in touch with a colleague who speaks Arabic better. So you are always in contact with people. There is a Facebook group, English Kurdish Translation, created by me. We have 2,500 followers. People share, help each other, and they ask questions. People in the UK, translators in the UK, sometimes they come across, you know, technical terms, and they post it there, and they will get answer within 5-10 minutes. So it is elaborative. There's a lot of collaboration. It is not boring, individualistic job.
You asked if it is a job only for elite or top translators, like you should work for the prime minister, the president, or the top doctors. No, I know a lot of people who work as full-time translators, and they get paid well, and they do not work like for the top elite for the country. But it's a good idea to be the best translator, to work in high ranks. But there are lots of people who work as full-time translators. Here in University of Slimani, we have like 60 to 70 graduates each year, and a good number of them get jobs as translators, and they are not like the elite, they are not like the top translators, but they can get work as a full-time translator. And for the technology, and that will replace human translators, technology helps, and that's interesting, but still we have a lot of new job opportunities. It's a difficult time for getting a job nowadays, but you know, let me give an example. There is a meme, I hope you have seen it. There is a cameraman and a helicopter driver. They are recording a scene, and it's written, in 10 years, both the cameraman and the helicopter driver lost their jobs, but they are replaced by a flycam or a drone. The question is, but there is another man who's controlling the drone or controlling the flycam. So you need to be well prepared. There are new working opportunities. Of course, you have to be aware of what's going on there, and you have to be well prepared. In that case, you'll get you have a chance to work as a full-time translator and be a good translator at the same time. No, I'm Harim Abdullah. You're welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, so I have two questions. Like one of them is it necessary to have a degree in translation to be a translator? I mean,
Sorry, can you say that again?
okay. So is it necessary to have a degree in translation to be a translator? I mean, for a normal person like, who studies other majors, what can we do to develop our skills in translation if we love to? That's one. Second one is, where is the major difference between someone who knows a language and someone who translates the language? I know there's a difference, but I just want you to explain more on it. Thank you.
Well, a lot of people are coming back from UK. They know a good English. They can translate from Kurdish to English and Kurdish to, let's say, English. But they do not have a stamp, a seal, okay? So their translations is kind of useless because you should have a degree to get a seal, okay? To get a stamp at Ministry of Justice, and then your translations are verified. So yes, of course, you need to have a degree so that you can get a stamp and then stamp, let's say, translations. You know, I think it was 2 days ago, someone called me that they have translated something, and they only needed my stamp. They've done the translation, okay, because he was coming back from Britain, and they wanted that. So, of course, for that part of your question, you need a certificate or a degree, yes?
Sorry, actually that's kind of a legal translation that needs to be like very specified with the stamps and stuff. But for example, if I want to be like literature translation or a novel translation, is that necessary for me to have a degree in translation?
Yeah, for that part, I think literature translation, you don't need to have a degree, but it is better to have a degree because you know that let's say, the theoretical part of translating and the techniques to translate certain, let's say, cultural and translation problems that come to you. Otherwise, yeah, I agree, you don't need to have a degree for that part. So, yeah, in translation.
I think that would be a bonus if you have a degree in translation. Because basically, that's what I always tell my students. It's like, so you can translate, but then you cannot, for example, explain the choices that you have made, okay? So if someone asks you why you've translated this phrase like that or this sentence like that, then you just say, because that sounds right to me. So that's not the kind of answer you would be given if you are specialized in translation. Because if you are specialized in translation, then you would explain the theoretical background that made you to make that choice, that decision. And then there are so many different translation strategies that you get to know when you study translation, and techniques, of course. Yeah. Any more questions?
I have a question.
Someone who speaks a language and someone who can translate
Oh, I
it.
can see. Okay, yeah.
So I think Payam still had a second part to her question, right? So,
What was the second part? Sorry, I
so,
saw forgot.
so the difference between somebody who can speak a language and somebody who can competently translate it. So how would you think about that difference?
Okay.
I believe it depends on experience. The more you do, the better you will be. If you, let's say, don't translate and only know the theoretical part, that won't help a lot. But if you do it practically, you will get better day by day. So if I compare my translations for 5 years from, let's say, 5 years ago, they are much better now because I translate on a daily basis. So, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we have 100,000 people in Iraq, Kurdistan, who can speak English and Kurdish, but how many of them are translators. So knowing the two languages is a prerequisite to be a translator, but experience is very important. If you have a certificate, it is a privilege. For example, if you approach a publisher to work for them as a translator, first of all, you need to tell them that you are a graduate, you've got certificate, you study translation as major or minor, plus your ability. And usually I recommend people to start translating a book, a novel, a short story, getting it published as a self-employed translator, then have your own product, then go to the next step with your certificate, with your experience. Then you can approach companies, publishers, then you'll be in a much better position. So in today's world, certificate is important, very, very important. It's not like 20 years ago. We have many, many translators who translated dozens of books without having a certificate. But I think today life has changed. A certificate is important. So I recommend people to have at least minor or better major in the area if they want to be a translator.
And I think there's this very well-known website. It's called PROZ, PROZ.com. And it's a platform for translators. There are so many translators registered on that website from different languages. And the first thing they ask you to, submit when you register as a translator is your certificate degree. Yeah, a plus experience and plus. Yeah.
Okay, I have a BA in English language and literature. I didn't know anything about translation. I started translating, let's say, as I said, a long time ago. But then this year I studied MA in Translation Studies. I translated things, let's say sentences, let's say documents. I didn't know anything about the technique. Just to confirm the doctor's speech, if somebody asked me about why did I, let's say, translate this term, this thing, like that, I could not answer that. But when I studied MA this year, I understood the technical part, the translation strategies, that a translator can use it to translate certain terms from one language to another. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so just a quick note. So we've probably got time for maybe 2 more questions from the audience, and then we'll move on to awarding the prizes for the competition. And one quick note on certification. I think when we designed our translation major, the idea was for Arabic speakers that by the end of that, you should be able to qualify for the American Translators Association standard of certification, which is about the highest single nation translation qualification that you can get. There's no equivalent of that for Kurdish, but there are some European countries that have English-Kurdish certifications. So on top of the degree, you can always get sort of local certifications in particular programs, in particular language pairs. And yeah, the goal of our translation major was to get people up to those standards. But yeah, so other questions from the audience?
All right, so my question is mainly regarding like literary translation. As someone who speaks both Arabic and English, and I love reading in both of those languages, sometimes I feel like you can never like get the same idea or feeling from one language to another, especially when considering that Arabic or Kurdish are very, very far away from English. It's not as easy as, let's say, French and English, because French and English have a lot more in common than Arabic and English do. So my question is, like, as professionals, how do you tackle that dilemma that you probably cannot produce the same imagery or feeling that the original language does? So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. By the way, there's something which is called translation loss. And it is inevitable. The role of the translator is to minimize the amount of loss in meaning, stylistics, imagery, whatever. And literary translation is particularly difficult, challenging. Poetry is the most difficult one. Some people believe that you need to be a poet to be able to translate poetry. So if you are a professional, experienced translator, you know how to minimize the amount of imagery, the amount of meaning loss. And there is a technique which is called compensation. For example, you have an idiom which cannot be translated from English into Arabic. If it cannot be translated literally, you have a technique. You translate it by an idiom which has the same meaning but different form. Sometimes this is impossible. You have the third technique, paraphrase. And the problem is that you have a page, and the page reads wonderfully in English because there is an idiom. And now you lost the idiom because you translated it as by paraphrase. What do? If you're not an experienced translator, you keep it, you live like this, you have translation loss at stylistic level. If you are a professional translator, you have another technique, compensation. What do? You lost stylistic effect somewhere because of translating an idiom by paraphrase. You introduced an idiom somewhere else. So what you produce is stylistically as beautiful as the original, although you had a problem and you solved this way. So if you have the background knowledge, if you have the knowledge about the theoretical part and the technical parts, you know what to do. But it is still challenging, and your role as a translator is try to minimize the amount of loss. And there is one thing in literary translation, which is creativity. You can be creative. You can introduce more sound effects. I know some languages are different in terms of linguistics as well as culture. Some languages are closer to each other. So translation between Kurdish and Persian is much easier than translation between English and Kurdish. But it's not impossible. And how do we know? Because we've got a huge amount of books translated between the two languages. Some of them are better than others.
Thank you. Okay. So we have time for one more question, I think. If anybody else has one last question to go.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming here and being with us this evening. My question was, you're a professional translator, so I'm sure you have come across certain words in English, especially, which they have never been translated before, or, I mean, your job now is to find an equivalent. I'm talking about translating in specialized areas of studies, for example, medicine and or politics, political themes, or legal themes. So how are you going to deal with these words in finding or inventing an equivalent in Kurdish? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll relate the answer to this question to the questions asked previously. The difference between someone who has studied translation and someone who hasn't is that translation, when you study translation studies, when you study the theoretical part, that it gives you more options. Generally, when we know a language and we do not know much about translation, when you come across a word, a phrase, a structure, and we do not have the equivalence in the target language, we get stuck, and we constantly thinking about the equivalence, or as one of the participants said, the exact meaning or the exact thing in the second language. But what translation studies teaches you is that it gives you more options. We have translation strategies and translation procedures. For the same problem, we have like more than one option. We have several options depending on the context. In some cases, you go for a functional equivalence, that the term that has the same function in the second language, but not exactly the same form. In some cases we go for cultural equivalence. The thing or the word that we are using is similar in the target culture. There are two different things, maybe two different activities, two different beings, whatever, but they have the same function in that culture. Sometimes we live there, we delete it out and we compensate for somewhere else. So the difference between studying translation studies and then translating or not having a degree in translation studies is that it gives you more options while you are translating, of course, depending on the context. That's why I'm not giving you one answer, because depending on the context, depending on the function of the translation, you can opt for different procedures, translation procedures. We have 20 or more translation procedures that in many cases, several of them can be used for dealing with the same problem. I hope I have answered your question.
Can I add one sentence? Yeah. Sometimes the word is related, for example, to medicine, as you said. As translators, you need to get in touch with experts. I've done this a lot, and I'm sure you do. So you get in touch with experts, some doctors, they know the term. Sometimes the term is not available in Kurdish. For example, the word Brexit, 4 or 5 years ago, Kurdish journalists didn't know how to translate it. Yeah. So they borrowed Brexit, but they knew people didn't understand, so they included a gloss. Brexit چون اداره بریتانیا لکیتی اروپا. After 1 year, they didn't need the explanation, the long explanation. Simply now, Brexit. If you search for it, and I've done it, you could find, dozens of Kurdish media using Brexit as a borrowing. So it is difficult, it takes time, but there are options. You borrowed alone, you borrowed with explanation, you get help from experts. So you see, it is not easy and it's not straightforward, but there's a solution. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks once again to all our presenters. One more round of applause for all of their contributions. Cool. And so finally, which I'm sure is the thing that all of you who submitted anything to the competition have been waiting for all night, we will in a minute give the results of the AUIS translation competition. So as it says up here, this is the first time we've ever had a competition. We want to make sure we do this maybe every semester, maybe every year. We will we'll work out what the plan is for the future. So in this particular round, we have 4 separate prizes to give. One for the best Kurdish translation, one for the best Arabic translation, one separately for the best translation in any language by a first-year student, and then overall a grand prize for the best translation in any language. So I think we still have to actually get the winners identified and named and everything, because everybody saw slightly different versions of the application. So what I will do, I'll scroll down and I'll show you the translation text. And then if you give us 5 minutes to talk among the visitors and the judges, then after 5 minutes, we will have sorted out who submitted what, and we will be able to give the final judgment. So this is the text. So if I highlight that, the idea of this was to come up with something slightly silly and full of lots of things that are difficult to translate, right? So for example, alliteration is a hard thing to translate. So silently said and sighed the satisfaction of the saved. That's 5 S words, right? So that's the sort of thing. Every one of those words might have a Kurdish equivalent, but if the Kurdish equivalents or the Arabic equivalents don't start with the same letter, then you lose what was in the original, right? There's a lot of basic idiom in here, right? The elephant in the room, biting the bullet, take that, you're pulling my leg. So lots of things like that. So there's a lot of different, and then sound, rhyme patterns as well, right? So where are we? Hop to the ground, ceased its sound and hopped to the ground. So yeah, so I tried to write this so that it would be almost impossible to translate directly in the way that Bana was talking about, right? There would be a lot of necessary translation loss. So after 5 minutes, we'll be back and we will tell you who managed to lose the least in translation. Okay. So while you're waiting, as I said, table at the back, there are copies of the requirements for the major and minor if you want to go and look at those. And don't forget, since registration week is coming up next semester, you can take TRN 310, which is the intro to basic translation. Okay. So if you've been interested today in translation as a practice and as a skill and as a career path, then yeah, take TRN 310 with Kazi next semester. And again, you can ask her any questions you have about it. So 5 minutes, we'll be back with some results. Okay. Yeah, it turns out that Google Forms are not as easy as you would think, given that Google is the biggest and most efficient company in the world. But, okay, so we've got winners for, and you lot need to talk between yourself which was the overall win. Actually, we'll do the 3 small prize winners, and then we'll have another 2-minute delay to work out the best overall winner, okay? So here are the results. So first up, the best first-year translation. I wanted to have like the top 3, but because of how annoying Google Forms is, we've only got the direct winners this time. So I think the first winning person is here. So the first year student with less than 30 credits who translated the best translation was Dalaf Ibrahim. So Dalaf, want to come up? And this is where I hold up the prizes in front of Dalaf and then say, but you can't have any of them because we forgot, well, we didn't forget. The prize we want for first year students is still coming. So no prize, but congratulations. Okay.
Thank you.
So what we'll try to do maybe is, do you have your translation in front of you? Do you want to read it out?
I don't have it with me.
Oh, she doesn't have it with her. Do you have Dalaf's one?
It's
on my computer on the floor. Okay, well, maybe we can't do that. We'll maybe have all the winners read them out afterwards, okay?
Okay.
So thanks to that, and congratulations. Prize coming. Come and see us next week. We'll give you a prize. Okay, so then next up, the Arabic competition, which had fewer entrants than the Kurdish, so we'll do the Arabic first. So the winner of the Arabic competition was Juman. So if Juman wants to come up. Cool, so congratulations, Juman. Here is your prize with an inscription in the front of it for you. So, okay, yeah, no problem. So congratulations, Juman. Yeah, of course it is. I didn't just give it to you to give it back to me. It's yours, right? And then next up, the overall Kurdish translation winner. Okay, so in this case, and I'm not sure this person is here, but let's see. The winner for Kurdish was Soma Jalil, who is not here, I think. No, well, no, say I know Soma, one of my old students, so I'll take credit for it. But yeah, so maybe to answer Payam's question from earlier, I don't think Soma has ever taken a translation class. So you can win the prize even without having taken translation. Although, as they all said, no doubt translation will be helpful. So now we have to have another quick 2-minute confabulation to work out whether Soma or Juman will take the overall super trophy. So give us 2 minutes, then we'll have, as the trophy itself says, a grand prize winner. So let's give it 2 minutes and see who is grand, okay? And then, yeah, I hope then we can also get them to read out their translations as well. So, so you'll get to actually have the English up so we can hear at least Dalaf's and Juman's. So yeah, 2 minutes, and then we'll have a final winner in 2 minutes' time. Working now? Okay, great. So the overall winner out of Kurdish, Soma, and Arabic, Juman, not biased by this person actually being in the room, but the winner is Juman. You are the overall AUIS Translation Grand Champion for 2021. So come up and take your prize.
That's my student, of course.
Yeah, so obviously Kazi takes credit. But yeah, no, so what the judges told me was that of all the translations in each language, Juman's was the one that did the best job of actually maintaining the literary aspects of this. So things like the alliteration, the idioms, the rhymes, and those kinds of sound patterns. So like I say, what I'd like us to do if we've got time. So Juman, do you want to stay up and then you can read yours out? Juman?
Yeah. Do you want to go to translation?
Yeah, so
Do you have it on your phone?
No, but you got it on my computer, right? Yeah, so if we finish up by letting Juman read her winning translation, those of you who speak Arabic can work out what it takes. Okay, so, and then that will be us for the day. So have you got it? Yeah, it's a big trophy, isn't it? It's like,
She translates like professional, and I'm very happy. But she's kind of slow. So
well, see, there was no speed limit on how quick you could do this. This one?
no, actually, I did it with that.
Okay, Reg. Oh, yeah, let's see, I'll hold the...
Yeah, let me just...
Yeah, so do you mind if you want to read, I'll hold the handheld mic so you can sit down and I'll hold this up for you, okay? Because if you put it on here, it'll crush the computer.
No, I'm not gonna, like, I'm just gonna hold it.
So,
Okay.
just listen again, I don't know how many of you speak Arabic, but this is Juman's Arabic translation of my silly story about the rat bag. So, Juman?
So, okay. If I just want to make it better. لقد كان الفيل في الغرفة هو عبارة عن جرذ يجوب أطراف منزلها فبوجود طفيليات في الأرجاء لا يوجد سيدة تتناول العشاء مع رفيقتها المدام دانتي المتباهية والتي كانت على وشك أن تدعو المحافظ إلى الشاي. لقد أدركت السيدة رات باغ أنها يجب أن تعض على لحيتها وتتقبل المحتوم فطرقت على الحائط وسمعت صوت الصرير وكانت تقف متصنطة إلى الحائط فطرقت مجددا عليه فصدر صوت الصرير مجددا فانهالت بمطرقتها على الحائط ولكن لم يصدر صوت الصرير فتأوهت وقالت لا جدوى من ذلك فصرخت ولكن هذه المرة وضربت بالمطرقة على نقطة منخفضة أكثر حيث غارت المطرقة في الحائط وظنت بأنها قد جلبت الموت المحتم للجرذ حيث قالت في ذاتها خذ هذا أيها الجرذ وتنهدت بسلام لظنها أنها قد تخلصت منه ولكن اتبع ذلك صوت صرير أعلى وفكرت أنت تسحب ساقي حيث خرج جرذ صغير غاضب من الحفرة الثانية يجر وراءه ساقه المصابة وينظر بعينها وتوقف عن إصدار صوت ووثب على الأرض وانسحب هاربا بضعف متجها إلى باب مطبخها حيث تذكرت بأنها قد تركت كعكتها المجمدة على الطاولة بدون غطاء وبالنسبة لعيني السيدة دانتي فقد كانتا تتفحصان صحن المحافظ المميز وبلا شك فقد أضيف إليها الآن الساق الدامية للجرذ ثم رن الجرس بقوة في وقت باكر مما دفع السيدة راتباك لتصدر صوت صريرها هي بدهشة ويأس واعترفت بقولها نقر حفرة يعد معضلة ولكن للتغلب على جرذ هي قضية أخرى تماما. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks for coming along. If any of you want, like, I guess, feedback on your submissions and things like that, we can probably try to set that up. So if any of you would like to get a little bit more, like, information about how your things were ranked, what people thought the qualities of them were, and so on, then keep in touch with us, and we can try and set up some communication between the judges and the submitters. But otherwise, yeah, thanks for coming. Like I say, take TRN 310 next semester if you do nothing else with your lives. And yeah, have a nice evening and see you all later. Okay, thanks again for coming. Bye for now.